Welcome to another episode of Raising Them Up,
our Christian parenting Q&A podcast, and we're your hosts.
I'm Israel Wayne.
And I'm Brook Wayne.
Welcome to another episode of our Raising Them Up parenting Q&A podcast. So today we're going to be addressing more listener questions. So what is the first question that we're going to tackle on today's episode?
So it's related to social media. And, I really am starting to see a trend as we're asked questions that a lot has to do with social media, screen time, internet usage, phone usage. It's all screen related, really. And I kind of find that that is becoming such an issue. I heard someone say not long ago that when our parents were raising us, there were a lot of issues. The old sin issues were really on the table, and there was a lot of video games at that era. And yet
television.
The screen usage, like the internet, social media, is a whole new issue for today's parents. And as Christian parents, we're having a lot of questions of how can we utilize this for good, and how can we keep this from harming our children and undermining their faith while they're in our homes. And so this question hits right there. And this lady wrote in saying, advice needed. I have a sweet teen daughter. She always has a great attitude and is lovely to be with all the time, really. However, she's been going to websites we've told her she isn't allowed to at all. I can see all her interactions, and there's nothing lewd or sinful, other than obviously the sneaking and lying that is the issue about this. I've been a parent long enough to know that taking things away to simply give them back later isn't very effective. Not with my children, anyway. She doesn't have a regular phone. She has a Gab phone with no internet browsing. You can't even hack a way to browse. She's doing this on our shared home computer. It's in a very open area of our home. It will be easy for me to block those sites, which I'm about to do now. There are sites like Tumblr and Pinterest. There's social media, and that's a big no for us until she's much older and mature. I'm looking for godly, practical, and creative ways to discipline and correct this behavior. She's homeschooled and the only child left at home.
Well, I'm going to assume an age. We have teen here, but she's saying they want to wait for social media until she's older. I'm just going to go with 13. So I don't know if that's the age, but I'm going to say a 13-year-old. I have a bunch of thoughts with this. And so first of all, I want to commend this mother for being a good parent in that she is doing a few things correct. She's got a dumb phone for her daughter so that she can communicate. Her daughter has a way to call. I'm a big fan of giving our young teens phones that they can get a hold of somebody if they're in a situation where they need to make a phone call and call somebody to give them a ride. Because oftentimes if it's a church function or something, they may be separated from the parents and they need to have a way to get a hold of the parents. So I like the idea with teens and even tweeners of them having phones for accessibility with the parents in particular to where they can communicate. So good for this mom. She's got a computer in the central place of her house. And so I commend her for that. And so there's a few thoughts that I have on this from the practical level, but then also we'll kind of take it to the big picture level. Let's go with big picture first. The thing that needs addressed here is not the internet usage. It is the sneaking and being deceitful, hacking into these sites, so to speak, when times that are not appropriate and without permission and without knowledge of the parents, knowing that she's not allowed to do it and she's still doing it. That's the concerning part. So, when you think about, how do I deal with this? What kind of discipline or correction should I use? I'm actually thinking that this needs to be a situation where we're not thinking so much about discipline and correction as much as we are you as a parent helping to wisely facilitate your child being able to access appropriate information. Let me kind of clarify what I mean there. The parent has already said here that the daughter's not accessing things that are bad inherently. Maybe time wasting, perhaps with Tumblr. I don't know what kind of content she's trying to access there. But with Pinterest, typically, it's more of a creative site, and oftentimes somebody's sort of researching an idea or a project, and they want to get ideas from other people who have posted on Pinterest. And so my thought would be, rather than coming down real hard and thinking, how do I lock this down, and how do I take away privileges, and how do I restrict my daughter, or how do I punish my daughter for this behavior? I think that those things would be very likely setting up resentment on the part of your teen child. And so I would be wanting to avoid that. I would be wanting to think about, how can I proactively engage my child with their desires and their needs, and find out, how can I facilitate this? So I'm going to be doing two things at once. I'm going to be trying to have a conversation with them about their behavior, and hopefully moving beyond the behavior to the heart behind their behavior. Why are they being deceitful? And why are they lying and covering it up? Those are the things that are the sinful problems. Those are the heart problems. And so you want to try to speak to the heart behind that behavior, and hopefully gently use this as an opportunity to help your teen see her heart, that her heart is not good, and that she's trying to cover up something. And so I think that as much as you can, bring the Word of God to bear on the situation, and try to speak to and correct that wrong motive that is activating the behavior. But then I think beyond that, I would say, as a parent, try to find a way that you can actually facilitate this within allowable means. So she has access to a computer within the family room. She has times, I would assume, where she's allowed to be able to access allowable information. I would be trying to say, okay, how can I help you to get the information that you're hoping to get? And let me just share this from our family. So I have some tweeners, some children and tweeners. So let's say ages 6 to 12, and they have certain videos that they enjoy watching. Now, we've had times where children try to get on an iPad or something like that and watch these videos without getting permission to do so. So this is the same kind of dynamic, that it's the going around the parents. It's in times when they're not allowed. It's the sneaking part. And we have to address the heart on that. But I don't just want to take things away from my children. I want to let them know that allowable things are allowable, and that we want to be able to facilitate them being able to do things that are not sinful activities within reason and limits, right? So I would try to find a way to schedule and allot maybe 25, 30 minutes of time for them to go watch one of these videos or a couple of these videos, or to be able to research some stuff on Pinterest. And what you'll find is, I think you just get less long-term resentment and pushback and a feeling of wanting to rebel on the part of the children if they're allowed to do things that are allowable. And so I would say, have a conversation, try to find out what it is that she's interested, what it is that she's wanting to watch. And even if it's something like, hey, I enjoy watching Dude Perfect videos, okay, fine. But we're going to have some parameters on that. You're not spending 4 hours of your day hanging out on a device watching that. We're going to carve out a bit of time. And so you're allowed in the living room on the family computer for 30 minutes. You're allowed to do that. And if we catch you sneaking and going around the parameters, then there's going to be problems. And from a practical, logistical standpoint, one of our moms, who's part of the parenting group, a veteran mom, posted and said, you can put a more difficult access password on that family computer, so that young person can't just log in when you're not there. I think that's really good. And then you can also, of course, with accountability software and filtering software, you can set certain parameters. Again, we are always cautioning parents to not rely on those 100%, because sometimes there's workarounds that kids figure out. But just as a practical application, if there are certain sites that they are getting into negative material, like say a YouTube or a Rumble or something like that, or TikTok, where they're getting in and causing problems, accessing things that they're not supposed to, as opposed to the material that you've given them permission to do,
right?
Then you may need to limit those particular
Yeah, take them off
sites.
the ability.
Block their ability to get in. And so I would say this is not something that you need to be hyper punitive about. I think this is a good opportunity for a heart-to-heart conversation. I like that she says this is a good child with a good heart. They're not having lots of behavior issues there. Man, those are really good things. I think this is a sign of good parenting. And my guess is that the girl doesn't have super bad motives in terms of what she wants to get into. It's probably stuff that's okay for her to be doing, but because her parents are being strict, she's trying to sneak around the parameters. And so that's...
They've set their boundary and she's going against that. So that is the tricky thing is you wouldn't want to say, well, we'll redefine this instead of discipline you for that issue. That does need to be addressed. And yet maybe going forward, there could be ways to find out what's that child interested in. For us, one of the things that we've sought to do imperfectly is say, all these technological tools are for helping you be creative and to produce instead of just be fed and entertained by the world. And that's a hard balance to find. It's hard to always implement. And yet, for one of our gals, she's very interested in flower bouquets. And so she likes to go look at photos in hopes that she'll find inspiration or techniques of how to keep the flowers positioned just so and what types of flowers a person should use. And, it's fun because it creates so much beauty in our home. And yet there's that caution as she's a young gal with sometimes there's really just inappropriate ads that are on some of these websites and so forth that have all this wonderful content. And yet it's not really just go check this out on your own. So I think guiding that young gal, in this case, were our children too, just guiding them in here are some good ways that you could look up some things. Having a time limit, super helpful because a lot of times the problems come with just too much and unfiltered, too much frittering of time. Another thing to do in that scenario would be look up other ways that you can find the content you're looking for. So, the internet has so much, but there's books. There's so many wonderful books or even old DVDs that would have less of that ad and intrusion into pop-up things that would come in and be in your child's face.
And then also social media, we're not the standard for anybody else's family. So it's not like you have to do what we do. And there's not a biblical absolute on this particular issue. But we've chosen to allow the age of 12 to be when we allow our children to get an email address. And that is something they use to correspond with family members.
Initially, it's only family members.
It's family members. And then social media is something that we allow them to do at 16. And by that, we mean like Facebook, Instagram. I don't think any of our kids have wanted to be on X because that's mostly politics these days. But, Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of things. We don't encourage TikTok. Snapchat's absolutely not allowed. And so just to give you a range of just what has worked for our family, we found that works pretty well. Mm-hmm. That by 16, usually they have some maturity and they can be a bit self-governed with it. Prior to that, we just haven't seen that would be something that they need or that would benefit them.
And we've had a couple that even post that age have decided they didn't want it. And, we're really kind of happy about that too. So next question is concerning online homeschooling. What are the pros and cons of online homeschooling?
So online homeschooling is one of those things that I think you sort of have to ask about the age of the child. So my goal, especially with little ones, is that you want lots of interaction. Mm-hmm. You want them sitting on your lap and you want to be reading them books. I think it's one of the most healthy things that you can possibly do for those 3 to 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
Is to have them sit on your lap and you read great books to them. You read books that teach them moral lessons and teach them about Christ, and but also engage their imagination. And so just having them physically sitting with you while you read to them is just one of the best things you can possibly do to help give them a love for learning, for reading. Relationship is key. It's huge. It's everything. When you get to high school, hopefully you have taught these children how to read, you've taught them how to think, you've taught them how to learn, and they can teach themselves. But I feel like for video instruction, that's really best for high school. I think that in those years, you've already established relationship. There's not as much need for you having as much of the hand-holding. I do think, however, that if you have the ability and you can do it, that teaching some of those classes together and having conversations is way better than simply putting them in front of a video. Because I know with my teens, I've taught certain things like economics and apologetics and some history and logic and things like that. And so we've had great dialogue. And sometimes my kids will come out with something and I'll be like, wait, you think that? And so it's helped me to see things in them that I didn't know was there. And I wouldn't have caught that if they're just plugged into a video.
Right.
I think in those younger years, if you can avoid doing the videos and online teaching, that's really best because it's about relationship and they need interaction with you as a parent. The one caveat to that is I know there are some situations where there are people who feel like they can't homeschool. And so they have their kids in a traditional school or particularly in a government school, and especially a single parent situation. And you may have a dynamic where a grandparent is able to be with that child during the day.
Right.
To physically watch them. And the single parent may have to go to work. And so that's a case where I think online learning can be really helpful. And one company that is Christian, but that's 100% online is Alpha Omega's Monarch program. They have a thing that they sold last I knew called Switched on Schoolhouse, which was like videos that don't go online. And so it was like video-based instruction that you could do on your computer without the online component.
Right.
So if you really want to make sure your kids aren't just jumping off and getting onto TikTok or YouTube or whatever, sometimes that non-internet based learning is better. But if you have a grandparent or someone who can be with the child, make sure that they're actually doing the school, that they're doing the lessons, there are some of those programs like Monarch that are Christian-based and that are pretty affordable, really. And that, it's teachers and tutors that are leading and guiding you through the material. And so you're doing your tests online. And so there's instant access to, comprehension questions and all of that. Anyway, homeschooling has changed a lot, and there are a lot of great options for parents. But I think the most important thing we have to keep in mind with homeschooling is relationship. And while relationship is still important in the teen years, those teens don't need as much snuggle time. And so
but they still need a lot of talking time.
They need talking time for sure. And so I think that's where for parents, particularly who are busy and they need to have time with their youngers, that's where video instruction, I think, can be very helpful. It can be a useful tool. And you don't have to do it for every subject. You can do it for a couple of subjects. Also, Master Books Academy is one that they have a lot of video instruction. So they're still using textbooks, but they're giving like online tutoring, if you will, through video instruction through Master Books Academy. And those are both Christian. Monarch and Master Books are both Christian-based programs. There are others, but those are two that I would recommend people to check out.
And I think sometimes, like if there's an extended illness or a baby born in the middle of the school year, those are times when that online schooling can help get through a season. It doesn't need to become a way of life. And so that can be useful to really contemplate, looking to, especially for those heavier topics, just really checking in with your children on the thinking idea-based concepts, like, for instance, the logic, the philosophy, the Christian worldview. I love Kevin Swanson's Worldviews in Conflict to help delve into this whole concept of helping our children think through where are these worldviews coming in, and then they can see it seeping in. We've turned that particular study over to some of our older ones for them to do it, but then we'll check in with them and hear their thoughts about it.
Well, Generations actually recommends that for 12th grade.
Yes, there's a little bit of that last final launching time. But it's so helpful to make sure that if we do the online homeschooling, that we're checking in with our children. And I have heard, so I don't have any recommendations on a program or a name of a company, but I've heard that there are programs that will help you shut off everything else on the computer except for that one application. And I've heard writers use this so that they have no other distractions. I could see something like that being super useful if you choose to do the online, because with so much time and unfortunately probably unwatched time, a child is so likely to be able to go, oh, let me look up this real quick and just explore and have so much of the junk that is on the internet put into their faces. So that'd be one caution. Secondly, I really see that some of these online courses that are taught sometimes are within a more live participation. And so there's a teacher with maybe 25, 30, 50 students coming in on a live basis to check in on that class. And so you're going to have perhaps that worldview of the teacher also expressed. So it's really important as parents not to just think, oh, I've checked off the mark. I have now enrolled my child and they're getting academics in home, because it's not the academics in the home that makes that difference for our children. It is the Word of God being lived out in the family life and the discipleship that happens within the home.
Absolutely. So more information on homeschooling issues and homeschool questions in my book, Answers for Homeschooling, the top 25 questions critics ask. You can get this through the generations.org web store. It's called Answers for Homeschooling. In fact, just go to generations.org, go to their web store, click on the store button, and then type in my name, Israel Wayne, and it'll bring up a list of all of my books. But this one answers all kinds of logistical homeschool related questions, just like that one. We do talk about online homeschooling and many, many other things in the Answers for Homeschooling book. So our final question for this podcast is a question we actually received from a grandparent. And we are so grateful that there are grandparents that listen to this show. Increasingly, grandparents are often raising their grandchildren.
Right.
And we believe grandparents have a powerful opportunity for influence in the lives of their grandchildren. So we love grandparents, and we are grateful that they are part of our community here. And so let's hear the question from a grandmother.
So this grandma said, I have 2 grandkids 2 to 4 times a week. I'm concerned about my 11-year-old granddaughter. She's recently started wearing all black and wearing things like spiked necklaces. She spends all day in her room or in the guest room here, sometimes on her phone and sometimes not. She has ADHD, but I'm concerned she may be depressed. I just don't remember my kids spending so much time alone. We also put in a new pool, and she's been in it 2 times all summer. Any advice? Is this normal for this age? She is going for a school physical, so the doctor will address some things then.
Well, I think there are some things here that are normal, and there are some things that are not normal. So her being kind of moody, that can be very typical for an 11-year-old girl.
Sure.
As young girls are entering puberty, they are having hormonal changes, biological changes, and so this could be par for the course as far as her being more withdrawn, being more quiet, maybe being more reclusive, wanting to be in her room more, not as active in the pool. I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about the situation if that's all that's on the table. However, there's this other dynamic that you mentioned where you said that she is wearing black and she's wearing spiked necklaces. Mm-hmm. That is not something an 11-year-old girl thinks to do on her own. That is an influence. And that influence is coming from probably one of 2 sources. You mentioned she's going to see a school physician, so she's attending school. So I would immediately think influences at school. There's also the possibility of it being online influences or maybe both. And so that concerns me, that we're seeing what appears to me to be influences that are peer-based or online-based, and then there's behavior that is changing with the wardrobe change.
Right.
So,
inside and outside.
Yeah, the external is a reflection of something that's changing on the inside. So if it was just the behavior, I would say, I don't know that I'd be overly concerned. That could be par for the course just with her age. The way that she's starting to act out in her dress, that indicates to me that something is not good. There's some things that are going on there that are problematic. And so your situation as a grandparent is a little bit different than the situation with a parent. And I have to say that as a parent, I would not allow my daughter to go around with a spiked necklace. And I don't know, in intrinsically what that looks like. Is this a dog collar? Is this what? I don't know. I don't know intrinsically what this is, but combined, I'm thinking some sort of a goth type of appearance. That's what's coming to my mind when I think about this. Nothing wrong with the color black, but I'm thinking this just feels like kind of a gothic sort of style that is being presented. And so that's what I'm having in my mind here. How does an 11-year-old go to a store and buy a spike necklace like this? My 11-year-old daughter is not doing that.
Right.
And, if somehow she got one, we're having a conversation. We are absolutely going to be talking about this as far as what's going on. And the fact that she's brought to your house by the parents wearing this, and the parents are either oblivious or fine with it. And to me, it indicates to me that the parents are not as engaged as they should be. And I'm not trying to be judgy here because I don't know your family. I don't know the dynamic. You mentioned she's at your place 2 to 4 times a week. That's great in one sense that you're getting lots of opportunity to have influence and relationship with your granddaughter. So praise the Lord for that. That's a great thing. That's a wonderful thing. But I'm just wondering, are these parents who are trying to just not really engage with their daughter in an adequate way? They're sending her to school. They're sending her to the grandparents. How much time is she on screens, online? I feel like the parents need to be more engaged here. And I don't know how you, as a grandparent, encourage them to do that and to get more involved. Maybe you can verbally, maybe you can have a conversation. I don't know the relational dynamics. Maybe you can't. Maybe you just can't go there with them. But I would say definitely be prayerful about this. I would be concerned about this shift in my granddaughter. As much as you can, draw her out, engage her, be a safe place for her. But if you could have conversations and try to get to the heart of asking questions about who her friends are and what are some influences, what websites does she like to visit, and what social media influencers or video creators does she enjoy, and what does she like to watch, and then go research those and look those up.
Right. And understand it better.
Start to understand her culture a little better and where she's coming from. I think those would all be very important things. But yes, I definitely see some red flags here, and I would be, as a grandparent, doing everything I could to try to draw her out, and hopefully she'll open up to you a bit.
So do you see any ways that the grandma could curb, say, one, just being on the phone the whole time? Are there any maybe ways she could say, we have basket time here when you're here, or even just staying in the room the whole time? As a grandma, there's less control, but maybe there's ways to influence that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing where you invite her to go with you. So, you're going to go to the grocery store. Hey, come with me, ride with me. Just try to get her outside. Hey, could you help me outside? I'm going to be planting some flowers, or whatever it is that you can get her to actually physically do with you.
Right.
And then sometimes in those spaces, it gives you opportunities to be able to talk. And so, yeah, you're going to have to try to draw her out a little bit. You're limited in what you can do, but grandparents do have phenomenal influence. And so we love you, grandparents. We're grateful for you and the part that you play in these children's lives. So with parenting questions, we encourage you to check out my book, Raising Them Up, Parenting for Christians. This book is available from the generations.org web store. Again, we encourage you to go there, generations.org, click on the store tab, and then type in my name, Israel Wayne, and all of my books will come up. And we would love to have you support our podcast by buying our resources and sharing them with friends. And then finally, if you have a question that you would like to ask on a future episode of this podcast, we have an email that you can send us your question. It's called raisingthemup@generations.org, raisingthemup@generations.org, and also a toll-free number that you can call and leave a voicemail, 1-800-223-6567, 1-800-223-6567, and we will answer your parenting question on an upcoming edition of the podcast. So thank you very much, and until next time, God bless you.